We have a lot of questions today. So our first one is, who is the best player on either side of the ball right now?
Luke Reimer on defense. I think that's pretty defined.
You could make a case for Quentin Newsome.
Okay.
Make a
I'm with
case.
you on that. Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe Ty Robinson
Yeah, I'd say.
on value.
Yeah. No, you got him. You got the two, Luke Reimer and Quentin. I'm glad you threw in Quentin Newsome, especially in the context of Evan
Who
Cooper.
are you taking to Big Ten media
Hold
days?
on. Especially in the context of Evan Cooper saying he's training him like he's in the NFL right now. Who do you take in a Big Ten media days? That doesn't always tell you who the best is.
Is Newsome going back again? It is red.
Good.
Gary Michaels.
I'm a huge Newsome fan. I mean, huge. I think he's a good corner. And he's an intent corner. He's a good leader. He's a leader by example. He does everything extra. You should, if you're a Nebraska fan, you should feel very lucky that you have those two corners, Newsome and Hartzog.
Offense is a very tough question.
Now I'm going Grant, Anthony Grant. You got to top it. I don't try. Who's better than Anthony Grant?
Well, based on his production at a Power 5 program, Billy Kemp.
Okay.
He's had
Fair.
2 70-plus yard reception seasons, which would be two of the best in Nebraska's program history.
That's fair.
So, like, if you're just going off what he did before, now, granted, he was nicked up and had the tragedy with his friends last year.
No, that's a fair.
You can't look at last year for Billy Kemp because of the tragedy and then some of the situation with his injury there. But the previous 2 years before that, he was a record-breaking receiver.
Yeah, you might have taught me on that one. That Kemp. Now, I would say, I mean, Grant's more of a pure football player, although Kemp's tough. I mean, he's a tough kid, little though, and he doesn't break a lot of tackles. That's
Jeff Sims' stats are pretty good too, as are Casey's. I mean,
yeah, you can make a case for Casey for sure, and Sims. You're right. Grant is a suspect pick. It is. You might have taught me with Kemp. Thank you.
What do you have next, Abby?
What non-returning starters do you think will emerge during spring ball and be talked about as potential big contributors in the fall?
AJ Allen. I think AJ Allen could. This is embarrassing. I think AJ Allen could overtake Grant, who I just said was the
What
best
about
player
Xavier
on
Betts?
Don't laugh, Abby.
What about Xavier Betts?
Oh, I long shot on that in that conversation.
Like, you don't.
Although no, you're right. As a guy that
plays
emerges as a non-starter. Yeah,
he wasn't on the team last year.
Yeah.
I mean, when we get a chance to talk to Xavier, it'll be interesting what he tells you. Like, what did he do for the last year?
Yeah. Oh, another guy that you'd look. He did start a few games or one is Latovsky. Henry Latovsky, I think, is going to be a very good offensive lineman before he leaves here.
Blaze Gunnerson.
Yeah, Gunnerson, Butler, they're two guys on defense that you wonder about. Maybe could make that big jump, but I think we covered that.
Well, and just based on kind of the moment, Omar Brown.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
no, thank you for saying that.
Looked like he had a pretty good winter. I mean,
Yeah,
he's carrying 6'9", 330-pound lineman on his back.
Right. And back issues have held him back now. And now he's carrying Teddy Prohaska on his back.
Thinking about the back.
No, it's an incredible.
The back injuries he suffered, and he's carrying Teddy Prohaska.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Thomas Fidoni's a big one too that you guys are missing.
Yeah.
I think we're just assuming he's going to start, though, because he's been hurt the last 2 years. Like,
yeah, I think that's a big one,
last
though.
year.
I mean, what I hope.
Well, he's hurt last year.
Yeah.
What I hope for Nebraska fans' sake and for Fidoni's sake and for Satterfield's sake is that he is what we think he is, which is a guy that could be like an all Big Ten type. Okay, I got to hold off a little bit on all Big Ten coming out of the gate.
Difference maker.
Yeah, a difference maker coming out of the gate. Yeah.
5 players to pay attention to this spring.
Jeez. I'll say MJ Sherman.
Yeah, we just got to name all the portal guys.
Well, MJ Sherman and Arik Gilbert, I think, are up there.
How about Fidoni? You got to say Fidoni.
Fidoni.
You got to say Jeff Sims.
Jeff Sims.
Okay, where are we at?
That's 4. Elijah Judy.
I'm saying Elijah Judy because they need him to be good.
Oh my God, they need that guy.
Yeah, Judy. I don't know that if I were a coach, if I were Tony White, that I would say that to him explicitly, but he might. And I would probably be subtle in displaying to him the urgency with which they need him to play and play well immediately. I don't think you say that to him like, hey, look at our depth chart. My God, we need you bad. I wouldn't do that, but I'd be a little subtle about it.
Well, they have a pretty good read. Number one, he's a Philly guy, and number two, he played at A&M for a former Matt Rule assistant coach.
Yeah, we don't know much about.
So they have a good read on what they got.
They got a good read. I wish to God we could watch a scrimmage and see what that looks like.
Next question.
Do you think we'll see many true position changes this spring?
Undetermined. I mean, I think it'd be really premature for us to start saying, oh, this guy's going to move to here and that guy's going to move to there. I think they don't even know. They need to probably see it and what they have before those decisions are made. But, when would those position moves happen? And
how profound, how big is the change? Is it just a corner going to safety, or is it a guy switching sides?
Other than like Cody Glenn going from running back to linebacker, like what have been some of the other real successful ones over the years?
I don't know. You don't even see it very often.
But the Cody Glenn one,
that was huge.
That
was huge.
That was like when Bo Pelini was in his defensive prime, just like, yep, linebacker.
Yeah, they switched Eric Martin from like a stand-up linebacker to a rush-in defensive
And he had
end.
like 10 sacks.
Yeah, 8.5. He had 8.5 sacks. That Eric Martin back, I want to say 211-ish.
He was all Big Ten.
Yeah, Eric Martin was one they switched up, but you don't see it. You don't see it very often at this level because those guys have pretty defined roles. They recruit them to have defined roles.
Next question.
What position group will you be paying the most attention to this spring?
Ooh, there's a question. Quarterback. No. I won't play.
Quarterback's obvious, though.
I feel running back. I always pay attention to running back, but that Allen, AJ Allen, Grant, Ramir Johnson, Gabe Irvin, all that, those guys battling that hard. And then does somebody come out of there and say, I'm just going to get lost here. I'm out. That you wonder about that because they are so deep there. So that's what I'm watching. That's what I'm really watching.
On defense,
on defense,
I just want to see like how they define these parts and these roles, because there's so many undefined pieces to this defense because of the scheme change.
Yeah. Hey, would you counsel people not to get too hung up on where a guy's playing? I understand what you're saying, but don't get like, I don't know that it'll be always so defined to who's playing where, because they're going to move a lot of guys around.
It's kind of chaos what they do. They're going to move people around to create chaos.
Yeah, you want to say who's your nickels? Well, in some situations it would be player X, and others it might be another player.
All right, Abby, I think we have time for one more.
All right, our final question. Over your years of covering Nebraska football, who has been some of the players that have emerged the most during the spring and made a big impact in the fall?
I'll throw one out first. And I know you got a really good one, Sid, but my one on this, I'll say Roy Halou. When Bo Pelini got here in 2008, it just kind of was assumed that Marlon Lucky was going to, be the guy. He had a 1,000-yard year in 2007 and, like 5-star recruit. And so they got a returning 1,000-yard back. Well, the new Pelini staff with Tim Beck running the running backs room and Sean Watson's still there. They really fell in love with Roy Halou.
Yeah.
And I think in 2007, you would have never have known that Roy Halou was going to be what he became the next couple of years to then become an NFL running back. But you saw Roy Halou in the spring of 2008 take the starting running back job from a back that had 1,000 yards the year before in Marlon Lucky.
I totally agree. That's a good one, Sean. And the guy I really remember, Stuart Bradley, was kind of an unknownish walk-on, but a really good-looking player. He was a big, long linebacker and had a huge spring game.
Just hit the crap out of
you. God, did he hit the crap out. And then he became a good NFL player, but he was lost. And then all of a sudden in that one spring, which I don't even remember exactly what year it was.
2002 or 3.
Okay. Yeah. 2003. Spring. You're right,
Sean. Bo Pelini's first spring.
Sean's got a freaky memory. And you remember that spring game, he put a wallop on somebody near the goal line. And he emerged.
But it was like 3s on 3s. It wasn't like 1s on 1s, but he would, and when the 2s and the 3s were out there, he was just crushing guys.
He was. And then he got good. He became an NFL player.
And then, the all-timer, though.
The all-timer, numero uno, Abby, on the list is Zach Taylor. One of the biggest stories in the spring that's ever happened in the last 20 years here, right?
That kind of like started his rise.
2005. It did start his rise
to where he's at today. I mean, the
Absolutely.
perseverance, the toughness. He took in a live scrimmage in 05, like 8 or 10 sacks in a scrimmage.
Yeah, he was getting whomped.
He had the flu.
Yeah, and they let it go. I mean, they let him play.
It was a 3.5 hour scrimmage.
And they didn't put Green on. I mean, he was not in Green, right?
No.
And remember, he interviewed us. He interviewed them with the media afterwards, as did Bill. And Bill made it clear, boy, Zach Taylor. I mean, Bill was effusive in his praise of Zach, the way his toughness that day. That's a great point, Sean. That was in spring of 2005. And that was sort of the start of the emergence of Zach Taylor.
He ran, it was like 180 play scrimmage. You know, a normal scrimmage is like 100. That's a good. And so it was like the length of 2 scrimmages. And the offense was so bad in 04 with Joe Daly. They couldn't do what Bill wanted to do, that finally they were doing it with, and like,
it was exciting.
Like he did not want that practice to end.
It was an exciting time.
Like we sat in the bleachers, and it was like, we got over there at like 10. We didn't get out of there to like 2.
No, it was an exciting little time in Nebraska football history. It was. And that 2005 team was all right. I mean, that's the team that went to the Alamo Bowl.
They beat Michigan.
And Zach was good.
They kind of ended Gary Barnett's career at Colorado. I mean, then Gary Barnett got beat by Vince Young in the Big 12 title game, and he got fired.
And then, of course, in 2006, Zach was the Big 12 Player of the Year, and they went to the Cotton Bowl, went to the Big 12 championship game, and one of the most memorable games that I've covered at Arrowhead, when they had a great chance to beat Oklahoma. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, Nebraska's just happy.
60,000 Nebraska fans there.
Yeah, it wasn't like Nebraska's just happy to be here. They just couldn't get it done in the red zone. They couldn't get it on the other. When they got to the other side of the field, they couldn't get anything done.
That grass in Arrowhead, it was like concrete. It was so cold.
Yeah,
it was just a frozen. It was just, I'll never forget that. And how everyone that went to that game tells me still to this day, and we were there, we were in the press box, but how cold it was.
What am I talking about, by the way? Did you remember the game? What I'm talking about is it seemed like Nebraska,
they were across the 40 like the whole game,
and they just couldn't get anything done.
Like they were in like Oklahoma territory.
Yeah, a lot.
And they were in this like purgatory between the 30 and the 40.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And
so not red zone, really. They couldn't get in the red zone.
They're fringe, and they didn't have a kicker.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Jordan Congdon could make like 30-yard field goals. So that was it, you know, and
yeah, he was an accurate short.
You had Alex Henry, by the way, on the sidelines that year, red shirt and just hanging out. You know, they could have just played Alex Henry.
That was a crushing loss for Bill. He took it really hard.
Well, the Cotton Bowl too, they were up 14-3, and they had control of that game. Yeah. And they had control of the Oklahoma State game that year.
Yeah.
And they should have won the Texas game. Terrence Dunn fumbles a first down that would have won the game.
Yeah.
They had 4 losses that year that all could have been wins. USC was the one that obviously they lost by, I think they lost by 18 points, 28-10.
Yeah.
In LA. But the other 4 losses that year, they could have won all those games.
Now, somebody on one of our listeners might say, Sipple, come on, you can't remember anybody from the Osborne era. There are probably guys that really came on in the spring. I just can't remember.
There just weren't as many surprises, I felt like, back then. Like, you just kind of knew those teams so well.
Yeah, that's part of it.
It was hard for like freshmen to play back then, and young guys. I mean, you had to be an older guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why when Amon Green got here in 95,
he got here in August, right?
It was kind of an anomaly that he played that much. I mean, that was not common.
No, it was very memorable.
And it took like Lawrence Phillips, you know, with his legal situation and other things that happened for him to get on the field.
Do you remember it though? I remember them practicing on the grass fields north.
No, I would have been in ninth grade in 95.
Okay. So I remember. See, Sean, I want to illustrate something we talked about earlier in the show about watching practice. Here's how it went back then. It was August, and he was working with the ones, and I was like standing on the field. I don't know, like Frank let us be out there for a period or something. I'm like, that's Amon Green working with the ones.
Yeah, he was the real deal.
Yeah, he was. And then, but I do remember Frank telling us, look, you guys can't be here this early. But we used to see a lot. We used to see a lot more than we do now. A lot more.
Or you'd go once a week too. There'd always be one day a week you go.
Yeah.
And at least eyeball the team.
Yeah.
And that's gone away. But
Yeah, I maybe could talk to him and say, can we just come the first 10 minutes every day? And then what happened with Osborne? He would say, yeah, you guys can come the first or the last. He'd say, you can come the last 10 minutes. But what would happen? We'd start pushing it. We'd come with a half hour left. God dang, I saw so much practice back in the day because Tom would come over and say, you guys are a little too early. You need to knock it back. So we would for a while. And then a few days would pass and we go back.
You've ruined it for everybody.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
We go back to a half hour.